They said the building had no basement. That was the first lie. On a winter morning in 1924, the Merrivale State Archive was being renovated, what used to be the old reform school for girls. Dust hung in the air like breath, and every hammer strike sounded like a memory waking up. At 10:47 a.m., a workman named Harold Crane knocked through a plaster wall on the east corridor. He expected hollow air behind it. Instead, his crowbar struck something solid and wooden. The sound echoed not sharp, but muffled, as if it hit the inside of a box. The foreman called for the lights to be moved. When they pried open the hole, a narrow beam revealed what had been sealed away for 50 years. A small room, no more than 12 feet, across completely sealed. No windows, no door handle, just a table, 2 broken chairs, and a wall covered from floor to ceiling with writing. Names. Hundreds of them, each one scratched into the plaster by hand. Beneath some, faint numbers, 1,874, 1,875, 1,876. The workers stood silent. One of them swore he heard a sound like paper being turned inside the wall. But there was no wind, no opening, only that whispering dry noise, over and over. Eleanor Brooks, the senior archivist on site, arrived within the hour. She'd been cataloguing county records in the new wing when she heard the call. When she entered the sealed room, the smell hit her first old lime, dust, and something faintly metallic, like ink that never dried. The names weren't carved deep. They had been written and then traced again and again until the plaster cracked beneath the strokes. The handwriting was the same, hundreds of entries in the same hand. Near the far wall, half buried under fallen plaster, Eleanor found something wedged behind a leg of the table. A small envelope, sealed in blue wax. No return address. It was addressed simply to whoever opens the wall. She turned it over in her hand. The wax was brittle, the paper dry. When she lifted it, she saw faint imprints beneath the dust. Fingerprints, small, like those of a child. She didn't open it. Not yet. The foreman asked what they should do with the names. She said, "Copy them." Her voice came out too soft, almost reverent. Everyone, outside, the noon bell rang from the town square, echoing faintly through the cracked windows. The sound carried into the sealed room, and for one strange second, Eleanor thought she heard a second bell answering from inside the wall. But when she pressed her ear against it, there was nothing, just silence that felt deeper than quiet, as if the air itself was holding its breath. She slipped the letter into her coat pocket. Later that night, she would swear the envelope grew warmer the longer she held it. Would you have opened it? If you found a room that wasn't supposed to exist, and a letter waiting for you inside, would you read it? Tell me what you think. Because what Eleanor found next didn't just rewrite the school's history, it erased it. The Merrivale School for Girls opened its doors on the first day of spring, 1873. The local paper called it a triumph of moral education. It stood on the outskirts of Plymouth County, where the salt air from the Atlantic met the scent of pine. From the road, the building looked almost kind. 2 stories of pale brick, white trim, and a bell tower that caught the light. But behind the new paint, you could still see the shape of the old almshouse it had once been. Its founder and headmistress, Sister Constance Merrivale, believed redemption was a science. "You can teach virtue," she wrote in the first school prospectus, "if you first teach silence." Inside, every sound was measured. The girls rose at dawn to the ringing of the main bell, prayed in rows, and worked in the sewing hall until evening. They were taught reading, scripture, arithmetic, and the virtues of obedience. But Merrivale was not a school for daughters of good families. It was for those who had fallen out of grace, incorrigible, promiscuous, unfit for domestic employment. These were the words stamped on their intake records. Many had done nothing more than run away from home, or been caught loitering past curfew. They came from Boston, Worcester, New Haven. Most arrived barefoot, their hair cut short by county order. When they entered the main hall, they were handed identical grey dresses and told, "You have no past here, only improvement." Sister Constance kept a journal, a neat, tight script. In one entry dated April 2nd, 1873, she wrote, "Some are too proud to bend, Others cannot remember who they were before silence. But when the bell rings, they all lower their heads. It is working. On the second week after the opening, she received a letter from the State Board praising the disciplinary serenity of her methods. That same evening, the nuns lit candles in the chapel and sang a hymn of thanksgiving. But in the dormitories, the girls whispered their own song, a tune without words, hummed so quietly it barely moved the air. They called it the Daughters' Hymn. No one knew who started it. No one ever admitted singing it. When the night bell sounded at 9, every whisper died. The rule of silence began, and in that silence, the building seemed to listen back. On the far end of the east wing, a new door had been fitted, one that wasn't on the original plan. The carpenters said Sister Constance ordered it herself. It led to a narrow hallway that ended in a locked door marked with 3 letters carved by hand, D.R. No record explained what they stood for, but on April 6th, Sister Constance wrote another note in her journal. The experiment has begun. The obedient will guide the disobedient. The daughters will lead the fallen back to grace. Morning fog rolled in from the marshes and hung over the road like a thin sheet, greying the edges of every fence post and willow. A county constable led a wagon up the hill toward the new school, the horse's breath a pale plume that matched the sky. On the flatbed sat a girl with cropped hair and a bruised pride she kept hidden by looking past everyone and everything. Her name was Anna Lowell, age 15, mother a seamstress, father unrecorded, offense, night walking after curfew, insolence toward authority, suspected moral laxity. The paper attached to her wrist with twine did not say that she had simply stayed too long on the wharf to watch lanterns slipping across the harbour like fallen stars. The gates of Merrivale opened without haste. Sister Constance stood beneath the bell tower with a ledger tucked to her ribs, a habit black as the baseboard shadows, face pale and unblinking. Beside her waited Miss Alden, a tall woman in an ironed grey dress, the one who would teach manners by example and arithmetic by punishment tallies. The constable handed down the girl as if he feared breaking something fragile and signed the transfer entry with an ink blot that spread like a bruise across the page. "Welcome, child," Sister Constance said, her voice careful and exact. "Speak only when asked. Here, you will be remade." Anna nodded without lowering her eyes. The nun's gaze paused at the small scar on the girl's chin, old, pale, the kind acquired by falling from a dock as a child and climbing back with her mouth full of salt. Miss Alden measured the hem of Anna's street dress with a glance and pointed to the door on the left. In the intake room, a maid cut the remaining length of Anna's hair with 4 calm snips and swept it into a pail as if it were dust. A grey dress waited on a chair, along with stockings darned so well that the men's looked like small pale rivers. On the table lay a thin iron pendant stamped with a number 113 and a prayer stitched on muslin. "Speak little, work much, love in silence. Wear the number under the collar," Miss Alden said. "Every morning you will show it, every night you will sleep with it." "What if it chafes?" Anna asked. "Then it will remind you to hold your head still," the teacher replied, not unkindly. They walked the main corridor in a quiet that was not peaceful but balanced, like a door held half open by a weight no one else could see. Girls moved in orderly lines past them, each with the same dress, the same cropped hair, the same quick flick of the eyes to the floor and away again. The building smelled faintly of starch, candle grease, damp wool, and weathered hymnals. As they passed the chapel, the bell rope trailed across the floor like a discarded vein. The dormitory assigned to Anna contained 7 narrow iron beds, with quilts pieced from the same 2 colors. A washstand held a cracked basin that glowed whitely in the window light. Someone had pushed a wooden trunk beneath the far bed. On its lid, a faint engraving, L. Pryor. Miss Alden noticed Anna reading it and shut the trunk gently with her foot. "Your hours," she said, handing over a card written in a precise hand. Dawn prayers, breakfast, sewing hall, copying hour, scripture, sums, supper, evening inspection, night bell. What is copying hour? You will copy what you are given to copy. And if it is wrong, then you will copy it neatly, Miss Alden said. Her voice softened. You will learn the value of order. Some girls come to prefer it. In the sewing hall, bolts of calico became uniform sleeves under the quick needles of 30 girls. The room's rhythm was the rise and fall of elbows, the whisper of thread pulled through cloth, the click of shears at the far table. A girl about Anna's age glanced up as she was placed at an empty station. Her eyes were wide and quick. Her knuckles were red with winter and work. "I'm Lily," she whispered when the teacher's back turned. "Do not ask me anything when the bell rings." "I'm not going to ask you anything," Anna said, threading a needle. "You already did," Lily said. But she smiled anyway with one corner of her mouth, a sign of friendship more precious for being brief. By afternoon, Anna's fingers burned and then grew numb, then learned the new muscle memory of the order imposed upon them. She pricked herself only once and didn't cry out. At supper, she discovered that meals were measured with a ruler as much as with a ladle. The bread was exactly thick as a finger, the stew always ladled to the same mark inside the bowl. Bells counted each swallow. After evening inspection, the girls filed toward the dormitories in pairs. Anna kept her head high enough to see the upper molding where the paint grew thin, and under that wash, she noticed lines, scores, and scratches that had been painted over too quickly. In certain lights, they looked like letters. She reached toward one as if to press it back into the wall, but Lily tugged her sleeve and shook her head. They turned a corner and passed a short hallway that the day's tour had not included. A door at its end wore a new brass hasp and no handle. Brownish brush marks around the frame suggested fresh paint laid over something older, something written by hand. In the slump of lamplight, Anna read faint ghosts of letters beneath the varnish. 3 shapes only, cut by the reflection: D, R, and a suggestion of a third stroke that might have been a period or a nail hole. Miss Alden's cane tapped once on the floor. "Do not linger, girls." Night lowered itself over Merrivale with the thoroughness of a quilt pulled to the chin. Beds creaked once as bodies settled, then held their breath. The final bell rang 9 beats, and silence took hold of the building like frost taking a window pane, not by force, but by encasement. The rules were simple. Do not speak, do not sing, do not cry out, do not pray aloud unless led, do not move about unless called. Anna lay awake and counted her breaths to match the long, even exhale of the room. The iron pendant at her throat had not yet learned the shape of her neck. It pressed a small half-moon into her skin that throbbed with each inhale. She tucked the number under the collar and closed her eyes. Somewhere near her ear, a thread pulled free and tickled like a whisper. Then she heard it. Not footfalls, not wind. A sound like paper rubbed lightly against paper, a classroom murmur without voices, ink moving across a page with no hand to guide it. It came from the wall behind the beds and traveled along it like a chill. Anna reached under the frame and touched the floorboards. They were cold, honest wood, and they did not tremble. Across the aisle, Lily's eyes were open and bright, not with fear, but with the alertness of someone who has heard a sound enough times to mark where it begins. Lily shook her head once no. Anna lowered her hand and watched the ceiling where lamplight seeped under the door in a thin, pale line. Long minutes later, another sound. 4 soft chimes like a little bell struck by a careful finger. The dormitory did not move, and yet she felt the beds around her notch, slightly toward the sound the way iron notches toward a magnet. Anna pressed the pendant between her fingers and silently mouthed her name to herself, lest it be misplaced in the new order of things. Before sleep came, she slipped one hand beneath the thin mattress and found the bed slat near the headboard. Using her thumbnail, she scratched 3 letters that no one could see unless they knelt the way she did. A-N-N. She stopped before the final A, as if leaving a door ajar. Near midnight, a shadow crossed the seam of light beneath the dormitory door. It paused, then moved on. A minute later, from the direction of the short hallway Anna had noticed, something clicked the closing note of a bolt settling into wood. The silence around that note spread and settled again. At dawn, the bell in the tower rang once for waking and once more for gratitude. The grey dresses rose like a single tide, and the girls opened their trunks and put on yesterday's numbered selves. In the corridor, as they fell into line, Miss Alden adjusted the collar of each girl, her fingers quick and deft, like a seamstress, deciding what could be mended. When she reached Anna, she paused longer than necessary, then straightened the iron pendant with a small, almost motherly push, and spoke so softly that only one person could possibly hear. Do not go looking for doors that were built to look back, she said. You are here to improve. The rest is for the ledger. Anna nodded. The thought arrived uninvited and stayed anyway. A door that looks back must have eyes. She kept that sentence with her all day, through the sewing hall, through sums, through the copying hour, whose purpose no one explained. When given a passage to copy in a hand not her own, she wrote with care, forming each letter like a step placed on new ice. The line read, "And the daughters shall remain." She did not ask what daughters meant. She drew a neat period at the end that could have been a nail-head. That evening, as the sky collected its light and put it away, Anna carried a bucket down the main stairs and felt the banister under her palm, warm from other hands. She looked at the paint where the grain rose like veins and saw, just at the curve where a small thumb might rest, the faint remains of someone else's letters. She did not trace them. She did not say them aloud. She lowered her gaze like a student who has learned the first lesson of any place that believes itself to be holy. Do not disturb what appears to be asleep. But that night, before the bell, when the last stitch of sound was tucked beneath the blankets, she opened her palm and found a small smear of graphite where it should not have been. Not from sums, not from copying hour, the powder was darker, oily, like the shadow left by a pencil that had been held too tightly. In the smear, the ridges of her fingerprints looked like the stacked rows of names she had not yet read, waiting behind a wall she had not yet found. The breath of the building moved through the dormitory once, slow and deep, and the lamps went out. Somewhere in the east wing, a latch lifted and fell again, more sigh than sound, the number at her throat warmed by a fraction. Anna slept with her hand under the pillow, stiff with the new habit of holding onto something no one could see. When the night bell touched 9 and faded, the silence that followed was perfect as snow. Inside that perfect shape, a single faint rustle began, like paper turning itself. It sounded, she could not help thinking, like a room practicing its handwriting. She kept her breathing even and let the sound move across her without catching it. If a place could remember, she thought, then a girl could too. She did not know what DR meant, yet the letters fit in the pocket of her mind, like a coin she'd decide later whether to spend. She slept and dreamt of harbour lanterns that refused to go out even when the tide lifted them against the dark. By morning, the iron pendant had ceased to chafe. It only rested, as if measuring her by the same rule the school used for every portion of bread, an hour of light. She rose, took her place in line, and when Miss Alden's cane tapped once for order, she heard another tap answering from the end of that short hallway, soft as if made by a child's knuckle on a wooden desk. No one turned toward it. Anna did not either. But the knowledge of its existence set itself inside her like a small, steady flame that does not announce itself until the room has gone completely still. The first Sunday after Anna's arrival was called the Day of Discipline. No lessons, no stitching, no sums, only the teaching of silence. At dawn, the girls were woken not by bells, but by the sound of a hand striking the wooden frame of each bed. No one spoke. The light outside was pale as milk, slipping through the frost on the windows like it had forgotten its way. Miss Alden stood at the end of the dormitory with her cane pressed lightly to the floor. "You will listen to the silence," she said. "You will learn what it asks." Her voice did not rise. It did not need to. The silence carried it to every corner. The girls dressed in sequins, left shoe before right, collars straight, numbers displayed. When the final buckle snapped shut, Sister Constance entered, her steps crisp and sure. She did not look at them as individuals, but as an assembled, soundless choir. "This is the language of grace," she said. "Speech leads to sin. Stillness is obedience. You will learn to speak without words." She lifted a small bell from her sleeve, silver and thin as a bird's rib, and let it ring once. The note hung in the air longer than it should have. "You will stand when you hear this. You will kneel when it rings twice. You will rest when it rings 3 times. The bell will keep time for your souls." The girls nodded in unison. Anna did not. She blinked once instead, slow and deliberate, enough rebellion to let herself know she still existed. The rest of the morning passed in rehearsed quiet. They swept the corridors and polished the wooden banisters until their reflections blurred back at them, like faint ghosts of their own faces. Each girl carried a small cloth. Each movement was identical. measured by the rhythm of a silent count. When Anna's turn came to scrub the lower steps of the east stair, she found the groove of letters beneath the layers of paint. She rubbed gently until one fragment appeared part of a word, a single curl of an L, or maybe the tail of an S. Before she could see more, Miss Alden's cane tapped once near her ear. "Careful, child. We clean. We do not uncover." "Yes, Miss Alden." "Good." The cane moved away, but the warning stayed behind like a held breath. At mid-morning, they were led into the copying room. Rows of wooden desks filled the old chapel space, where the altar had once been replaced by an instructor's table. Each girl received a slate and a sheet of fresh parchment. On the chalkboard in front hung a single sentence written in tall, careful letters. "Silence is the mother of virtue." The teacher, a nun whose face Anna had never seen uncovered, wrote the same phrase again and again with perfect patience. The air smelled faintly of wax and chalk. "Copy this until you no longer think of its meaning," the nun said. "Meaning is pride," Anna wrote slowly, the nib of her pen scratching like an insect across the paper. The ink sank into the page like water into dust. Around her, the whisper of writing formed a strange sort of music, each quill a note, each pause a rest. After an hour, Anna's fingers cramped. She flexed them and glanced sideways. Lily's paper was covered edge to edge with identical sentences, no errors, each line perfectly aligned. But her eyes had gone empty, as if the words she'd copied had replaced what she once thought. In the afternoon, they learned measured walking. It was not enough to move. One had to move at the same speed as virtue. A line of 30 girls crossed the courtyard in matched steps, turning corners with the precision of soldiers. The gravel underfoot made a sound like whispers trying to rise but being crushed. During supper, no one spoke. The meal began with one chime and ended with 3. When the last bowl was cleared, Sister Constance stood and recited the rules. No laughter after dusk, no talking without address, no crying without permission, no singing except at prayer, no speaking names of those transferred, and above all, no words in the daughter's room. The last line made Anna's spoon stop halfway to her mouth. The title sounded ordinary, yet the way the sister said it, slow, deliberate, made the air seem thicker. The girls around her kept eating without change. She realized they already knew. That night, when the final bell struck 9, Anna lay in her bed awake. Her fingers traced the wooden slat where she had scratched her name. The cut was shallow. It might be sanded away by morning. She pressed her ear to the wall and heard it again, the faint rustle, the sound of paper turning itself, or maybe of someone writing very slowly on the other side. She mouthed a single word into the darkness. "Lily." Across the room, the other girl turned her head. Even in the faint light, Anna could see that her lips were sealed, pressed together like the spine of a closed book. Then, from somewhere far down the corridor, came a second, sound soft, rhythmic, 3 chimes, spaced evenly apart. The pattern of rest. The building exhaled. The silence deepened, settling over their beds like snow. The punishment room wasn't meant to look cruel. It looked like a small office, clean, measured, almost serene. That was its cleverness. Anna first saw it 3 weeks after her arrival, on an afternoon when her hand slipped during copying hour and left an ink blot the size of a tear across the page. It was the smallest thing. But in Merrivale, accidents were moral events. Miss Alden said nothing as she lifted the paper, examined it, and set it aside. Then she nodded toward the corridor. Ledger room. The other girls froze, as if time itself had been struck by a bell. Anna stood, smoothed her apron, and followed. The room was in the west wing, behind a door marked inventory. Inside were rows of ledgers stacked to the ceiling, the air heavy with old ink. A single window was nailed shut from the outside, and light filtered in through cracks in the boards, falling in stripes like bars. At the desk sat Sister Constance herself, writing in the slow, careful hand of someone recording eternity. "Number," she said, without looking up. 113. "Offense?" "Blotted line," Miss Alden answered. Sister Constance made a neat entry, her pen scratching like a needle through fabric. Then she opened a second ledger larger, bound in red leather, its corners darkened by use. On its cover, embossed in fading gold, "Conduct and Correction, 1,873. She turned to a page near the center, and Anna saw it was divided into columns: name, number, transgression, amendment, transfer. Most entries were crossed out in black. The ones not crossed out had only a single word written beneath transfer: DR. Anna stared. There were dozens, maybe hundreds. Sister Constance noticed her eyes move and placed her hand over the page. Curiosity, she said, is the first rebellion. Yes, sister. Do you know why silence is necessary, child? To make us obedient, Anna said before she could stop herself. The nun's expression didn't change, but her pen paused mid-air. To make you pure, she corrected gently. Purity is the absence of noise. The world outside is loud with sin. We make quiet here. She signed the bottom of the page, the letters long and precise. Then she dipped a quill into a smaller inkwell, filled not with black, but a pale grey liquid, almost silver. With it, she traced a line through the previous name and wrote in the margin, replaced. Every silence requires a voice to be surrendered, she said, almost as if explaining scripture. Go, number 113, copy again until you forget why you're writing. Miss Alden placed a hand on Anna's shoulder and led her out. The pressure was light but absolute, like the hand of gravity. In the hallway, the door clicked shut. The sound lingered longer than the conversation had. That evening, Lily whispered to her when no one watched. Did she write you down? Yes. What color ink? Grey. In some. Lily's face tightened, the faintest frown that seemed to age her by years. That's not punishment ink. That's replacement. Replacement for what? For someone who's been transferred. The word hung there. Transferred. It was the same word she had seen in the ledger, the one that ended in D. R. At supper, the air felt different, thicker. Anna looked around the hall and noticed that one of the girls who always sat 2 seats ahead, Martha, the one with the limp, was gone. No announcement, no explanation. Just an empty bowl at her place. When she asked Lily quietly where Martha had gone, Lily pressed a finger to her lips and shook her head. Then she tilted her eyes upward toward the rafters. Anna followed the motion and saw that the beams above the dining hall had small chains bolted into them, not strong enough for restraint, but enough to hang bells. There were 12. Only 9 had clappers. Each time the main bell in the tower struck the hour, a second, softer tone followed from the rafters, out of rhythm by half a beat, like an echo that belonged to another place. That night, when the tower bell marked the 9th hour, Anna lay awake again. She thought of the grey ink, the word replaced, the absence at the dinner table, and the quiet echo of the bells. From beyond the wall, she heard that same shuffling, faint but steady. This time, she realized what it was. Someone writing, not one hand, but many, a chorus of scratching pens. The rhythm matched the sound of the copied sentences from class. She pressed her ear closer to the wall and mouthed, "Who's there?" The scratching stopped. Then, after a breath, something else happened. A single tap light, deliberate, came from the other side, as if a fingertip had touched the plaster. Then another, 2 beats apart. The rhythm was familiar. 1 tap, pause, 2 taps, pause, 3. The pattern of rest. Her throat went dry. She whispered, "Daughter's room." The air on her skin turned cool. When the morning came, the wall beside her bed looked no different, but on her pillow lay a small grey smear, like dust from stone. She rubbed it between her fingers. It left a faint metallic scent, almost like ink. At breakfast, she looked at the line of girls filing into the hall. One more was missing. Another empty place, another bowl untouched. The bells in the rafters stayed still that morning, but in the silence between the chimes, Anna heard something else. A low hum, almost human, too steady to be breath. And when she raised her eyes to the tower window, she thought she saw movement inside the bell chamber. A shadow that leaned forward, as if listening. She looked back down before anyone noticed. In Merrivale, even the act of noticing could be an offense. By evening, she had made a decision. Tomorrow, she would find a reason to go near the east wing. She would find that door again, and maybe, if the sound returned, she would answer. The east wing was not forbidden, but it might as well have been. No lessons were held there, no chores assigned. The windows were always shuttered, and the dust on the floorboards stayed undisturbed, as if the air itself refused to cross. Still, there was a path, worn faintly down the center of the corridor, the sort that comes from feet that never meant to leave prints. Anna waited until the hour of laundry collection, when the other girls were bent over steaming tubs, and the corridors echoed with water sloshing in buckets. She slipped away with a cloth in hand, pretending to fetch a replacement bar of soap. The east corridor smelled of lime wash and damp wood. Her footsteps sank into the quiet like pebbles into snow. Halfway down, she saw at the door, the one she'd glimpsed that first week, brass hasp gleaming faintly in the dim light. No handle, no keyhole, only the faint outline of letters beneath the varnish. D.R. She reached out and brushed her fingers over them. The paint felt warm. Behind the door came a faint hum, almost like wind in a bottle. Not a moan, not a voice, but something sustained. She leaned closer. It wasn't wind. It was a sound like breath drawn in unison, many people breathing together, slow and rhythmic, the inhale rising, the exhale falling. The rhythm matched the school's bells. 1. Pause. 2. Pause. 3. Her pulse caught the beat before she realized it. Then came another sound, so soft she almost missed it. The rustle of fabric, the scrape of a chair leg. Then, unmistakably, a voice, a girl's, no older than herself. Then, Anna pressed her ear closer. Given. The word came again, clearer now. Forgiven. Her breath fogged the varnish. The humming deepened, grew into low tones, then layered itself into harmony. Dozens of voices joined, all female, all soft, singing not with melody but with repetition. The same 3 words cycling over and over. We remain, we remain, we remain. Her throat tightened. She whispered through the crack. Who are you? The humming stopped. Then came 3 knocks from inside, quick and light, the sound of fingertips on wood. After them, a small reply spoken, not sung, a whisper carried in breath rather than word. Daughters. The corridor went still again. The sound died so completely it was like someone had drained the air. Behind her, a voice spoke. Number 113. Anna froze. Miss Alden stood at the far end of the hall, hands folded around her cane. She looked neither angry nor surprised, only tired. Return to your post, she said. Anna turned. What's in there? Storage, the teacher replied. Old furniture. I heard them. What you heard, Miss Alden said quietly, is the echo of those who can't stop practicing silence. Anna's mouth went dry. The daughter's room. Miss Alden's jaw tensed. That name does not belong to you. I saw it written. No, she said, stepping closer. You remembered it. That's not the same. She rested a hand on the doorframe, and for a moment, Anna thought she saw the older woman's fingertips tremble. If you listen too long, Miss Alden murmured, the quiet learns your name. A sound from within one single tap made both of them look at the door. Miss Alden drew her hand back at once, as though burned. Back to the hall, she ordered. They walked in silence until the corridor turned. Before Anna could speak again, the teacher stopped her with a raised hand. You're not the first to ask, she said, but you'll be the last I answer. Remember what was told at supper. No words in the daughter's room. The next day, Merrivale held its weekly inspection. A man from the county arrived in a black carriage, his shoes shining so brightly the girls could see their faces in them. He was led through the sewing hall, the classrooms, the chapel, everywhere. He nodded approval. But when they approached the east wing, Sister Constance stepped forward and blocked the way. That section remains under repair, she said smoothly. The man seemed not to notice that the paint on the door behind her was already dry. After he left, the girls were rewarded with a longer supper. Anna ate without tasting. Across the table, Lily's hands shook. She didn't raise her eyes all evening. When the bell rang 9 times that night, Anna waited for the quiet that followed. Then she sat up in her bed and looked toward the eastern wall. The dormitory was dim, the air still. She pressed her hand to her collarbone, feeling the weight of the iron pendant there. Slowly, she lifted it off and set it on the floor. The metal left a pale imprint against her skin. She whispered, "If you can hear me, I heard you." Nothing. Then, Faint and steady. 3 knocks. She lay back down, the sound pulsing through the floor like a second heartbeat. When she woke at dawn, the pendant lay beside her pillow again, polished to a brightness it hadn't had the night before. On its back, she found a new mark, etched so lightly it could have been a trick of light. 3 tiny letters, where the number had been. D.R. The morning of inspection began with the ringing of both bells, the tower bell outside and the smaller one inside the chapel, struck 3 times by Sister Constance herself. No one had heard them ring together before. The girls stood in 2 lines across the courtyard, grey dresses neat, collars stiff, pendants glinting faintly in the thin sunlight. The air smelled of soap and wet stone. Every window was open to let the place breathe virtue, as the sister called it. Even the sky seemed scrubbed clean. Anna kept her eyes forward. Her pendant still bore the faint marks of those 3 letters, D.R., though she had tried to polish them away with her sleeve until her fingers hurt. Miss Alden walked between the rows, tapping the ground twice with her cane before stopping in front of each girl. "Smile," she whispered. "Show gratitude. Nothing else." The gate creaked open, and the visitor stepped through a tall man in a wool coat with brass buttons and gloves too new for the season. The county inspector, Mr. Augustus Ward, carried himself with the polite arrogance of someone accustomed to finding everything in order. He removed his hat. "Sister Merrivale," he said, bowing slightly. "The board sends its regards." Sister Constance smiled with the serenity of marble. "We are always grateful for the board's faith." Anna had never seen her smile before. It didn't soften her face, it polished it. They toured the sewing hall first. Girls worked with perfect rhythm, the hum of needles rising like prayer. The inspector nodded, impressed. Discipline, devotion, industry. Remarkable. "The girls find purpose in order," Sister Constance said. "They are remade through structure." Anna caught Miss Alden's gaze. The teacher's mouth was pressed thin, as if holding something unspoken behind her teeth. Then, the group turned toward the east wing. For a moment, Anna thought Sister Constance would allow it. But just as the inspector's boots reached the first step, she spoke. "That section is being renovated. Old storage rooms. Nothing of note. May I see it anyway?" Ward asked lightly. "I'm afraid the floors there are unsafe." "Unfortunate," he said. "The board always enjoys seeing a school's full extent." "I'm sure," the sister replied, voice still kind. "But safety must come before curiosity." Something in the way she said that made Anna's heart lurch. They turned back toward the chapel. The inspector paused beneath the bell tower, listening to the faint echoes inside. "You keep the bells in excellent condition," he said. "They keep themselves," Sister Constance answered. That night, after the visitors departed, supper was served later than usual. The air carried a hint of candle, smoke, and polish. The girls ate in silence, but the quiet was different now, stretched thin, like something had been hidden underneath it. After the plates were cleared, Sister Constance stood. "This day has shown our strength," she said. "Tomorrow, we will renew our vows of silence. Those who falter will serve in correction." She let her gaze travel down the rows until it found Anna. It lingered, then passed on. Later, in the dormitory, Lily turned toward her. "You shouldn't have gone near that door," she whispered. "I didn't tell them," Anna said. "I know," Lily replied, "but the building tells everything." Before Anna could answer, Miss Alden entered with the inspection lantern. She stopped at the end of the row, the light trembling faintly in her hand. When she reached Anna's bed, she hesitated. Her eyes dropped to the pendant on the girl's chest, then rose again. "Hold out your hands," she said quietly. Anna obeyed. Miss Alden placed something small and cool into her palm, a brass key, old and dulled with age. "You'll find a place where it fits," she said under her breath. "Don't use it unless you must." "Why give it to me?" "Because I did once what you're about to do." Anna stared at her. "You?" But Miss Alden had already moved on. When the lantern light faded, Anna lay awake, the key hidden in her fist. From the east wing, faint as breath, came a single low hum, 1 note, then 2, then 3, the pattern again. Outside, rain began to fall, soft and steady, like the sound of pages turning. Anna held the key until sleep finally took her. its cold shape pressing into her palm like a promise. The rain did not stop for 3 days. It blurred the windows, soaked through the roof beams, and turned the air in Merrivale thick with the scent of iron and damp cloth. The girls moved slower through their routines, like clockwork winding down, their grey dresses growing darker at the hems. On the 4th night, when the lamps in the dormitory had burned low and the others were already asleep, Anna reached beneath her pillow and touched the key. Its brass was no longer cold. It felt warm, almost pulsing with her heartbeat, as though it had been waiting. The rain outside covered every sound. Perfect cover. She slipped out of bed barefoot and wrapped a blanket around her shoulders. The corridor beyond the dormitory was nearly dark, just a thin wash of lamplight from the chapel at the far end. Water dripped somewhere in the walls, each drop echoing like a faint metronome. Her steps made no sound on the wood. At the turn leading to the east wing, she hesitated. The air there always felt heavier, as if silence itself grew thicker. She passed the sign that read, "Storage and Repair." The brass plate gleamed faintly when her shadow crossed it. The door to the D.R. corridor stood just ahead. She held up the key. The lock was gone, but below the hasp she noticed a small iron loop near the hinge, barely visible, dusted with paint. She fit the key into it, almost without thinking. It turned once. Something clicked, not in the lock, but inside the wall. A sigh seemed to pass through the wood, and the door eased open an inch, just enough to let her fingers in. A faint current of air escaped, warmer than she expected. It smelled of lime and candle soot, and something faintly floral, like lavender left to dry for too many years. Inside was darkness. She stepped in. The beam of her small candle, stolen from the chapel shelf, revealed cracked plaster and rows of narrow wooden panels running the length of the corridor. They weren't doors, but boards hammered over something else. In some places, the plaster had flaked away, revealing faint writing beneath. She raised the flame closer. Names, dozens of them. They covered the wall in rows, each etched deep, as if carved with nails or pins. Some had dates beside them. 1873, 1874. Others had only initials. A few were crossed out, replaced by new ones below. Her breath caught. The pattern was identical to what she'd seen in the ledger. Anna, Lily, Miss Alden. Her hand froze. The teacher's name was there. Clara Alden, 1858, 1874. The date was wrong. It couldn't be. She ran her fingers across the letters. They felt fresh, the grooves sharp and clean, as though carved only yesterday. Behind her, a sound stirred, a soft whispering, like skirts brushing across the floor. She turned. The far end of the corridor glowed faintly, the light shifting as if someone were holding a lantern around the corner. "Who's there?" she whispered. No answer. Only the hum she knew by heart now, rising from the walls. "We remain. We remain." She took a step closer to the nearest name, her candle flickering. The flame caught a small recess between two boards, a crack large enough for her fingers. She pulled one free. Behind it, the plaster gave way to another layer, older, whiter, more names. Hundreds, each written in the same hand. And beneath them, something else. A phrase scratched into the wall, shallow and hurried, as though written by someone with shaking hands. "The daughters shall remain." She read it aloud under her breath, and the hum behind the wall deepened into something almost like breath itself, many lungs exhaling at once. A gust of air blew through the corridor, though no window was open. Her candle guttered and went out. She froze. In the dark, faint scratches echoed, not from one spot, but from all around, as if the walls themselves were writing. She held her breath and pressed her ear to the plaster. Tap, tap, tap. 3 beats, the pattern of rest. Anna, her name, spoken softly, almost tenderly, from behind the wall. She stepped back, heart pounding. "Who are you?" A pause. Then the same voice, younger now, maybe her own age. "We are the ones who learn too well." The boards shivered once, like lungs drawing in air. The whisper came again, closer. "You took her key." She felt something cold brush her wrist, like a finger made of air. Anna stumbled backward, clutching the candle holder to her chest. Miss Alden gave it to me, a faint laugh, childlike, threaded through the dark. She would. She still owes her voice. The air pressed in, then silence, the kind that doesn't merely fall, but closes. When Anna opened her eyes, the candle had flared back to life. She didn't remember relighting it. She turned and ran, the flame jerking wildly as she reached the end of the corridor. The door shut behind her with a slow, deliberate click. She leaned against the wall, shaking, gasping for breath. When she looked down at her hand, the brass key was gone. In its place lay a small iron tag, oval, stamped with 3 letters, D, R, and below it, a number 113, her own. The next morning, the rain had stopped, but the building hadn't noticed. Merrivale still smelled like damp wood and sleep. The girls moved through their chores slower than usual, as if the storm had soaked into their bones. The bells rang a fraction off-tempo, one note slightly delayed, like a breath caught before a word. Anna stood at her desk in the copying hall. Her fingers still smelled faintly of iron from the tag she'd found. She'd hidden it beneath a loose board under her bed, but even now, she could feel its weight, as though it pressed against her skin from miles away. Miss Alden entered the hall with her usual measured calm, but something in her was different today. Her hair, normally smooth beneath her bonnet, was slightly undone at the back. Her voice, when she called the lesson, trembled almost imperceptibly. "Today," she said, "you will copy from the Book of Correction." Each girl received a single sheet of paper, already marked with faint lines of writing that shimmered when tilted to the light. The ink wasn't black, it was grey, pale as rainwater, like the kind Sister Constance had used in her ledger. Anna blinked. The words were barely visible, but when she squinted, she recognized the first line, "The daughters shall remain." Her pulse skipped. She looked up. Miss Alden was watching her, though the teacher's gaze slid away a second too late. "Begin," the woman said softly. The scratching of pens began a soft storm of sound. Anna tried to write the first line, but the words came too easily. Her hand seemed to move without resistance, each letter forming itself. She wasn't writing so much as tracing something already there. The ink deepened under her pen, like she was awakening words instead of creating them. She looked down. The next line had appeared without her touching it. "We remain in grace. We remain in silence." Her pen hesitated. The ink trembled, as if impatient. She whispered, "Who's writing this?" The girl beside her, Lily, did not look up. Her quill moved with mechanical rhythm, her lips slightly parted, breath syncing with the movement of her hand. Her eyes were glassy, reflecting only the page. "Lily," Anna whispered. "Stop." No response. At the front of the room, Sister Constance entered quietly. The sound of the pens faltered for a moment, then fell perfectly back in sync, like an orchestra guided by a hidden conductor. She spoke calmly, her voice carrying through the hall like smoke. "You see how unity refines imperfection. Each of you is a vessel. A daughter must remain open, that the word may pass through her." Anna's hand began to tremble. The nib of her pen scratched deeper, drawing blood from her fingertip. The page absorbed it without stain. The writing did not stop. The line that appeared next was not hers. "Number 113 remains." She froze. Across the room, Miss Alden's hand convulsed. Her pen snapped, ink splattering across her sleeve. The girls kept writing, unfazed. Sister Constance turned toward her. "Is there fault in your hand, Miss Alden?" The teacher straightened, hiding the tremor. "No, sister." But Anna saw it, fear, sharp and unmasked, flashing in her eyes before the calm returned. Sister Constance's smile did not reach her face. "The room will forgive the unsteady. Continue." The lesson lasted another hour, though time seemed suspended. When it ended, each girl stood and laid her page on the front desk. Anna's hand shook as she placed hers down. She glanced at Miss Alden's page. It was blank. Not a single mark. Sister Constance gathered the sheets into a neat stack and tied them with a thin red ribbon. "Their words are ready," she murmured. "They'll be delivered tonight." "Delivered where?" Anna asked before she could stop herself. The sister turned her gaze on her, patient but heavy. "To the ones who cannot attend class." That evening, Miss Alden found Anna scrubbing the dining hall floors. She looked pale, her lips colorless. "You saw the writing," Anna said. "I always see it," Alden replied. "It's not written for us, but it used my number." The teacher's eyes softened. "Then you've been chosen." "For what?" "To remember." Anna stared at her. "You said you once did what I'm about to do. Was it this?" "No," Alden said quietly. "Worse." She pulled something from her sleeve, a folded page, old and worn. "I took this once. I shouldn't have." Anna unfolded it. The handwriting was the same as in her copybook, the looping, deliberate script. The ink grey, the words faint. When the daughters stop writing, the walls forget to breathe. She looked up. "What does it mean?" Miss Alden's voice cracked. "It means the writing isn't what keeps them alive, it's what keeps them contained." Before Anna could reply, the chapel bell rang twice, the call to evening prayer. The sound vibrated through the floor, a deep pulse that seemed to answer itself from somewhere below. Lily passed them, eyes hollow, lips moving silently. Anna caught only one phrase from her whisper: "The daughters shall remain." When prayer ended and the dormitory lights dimmed, Anna lay awake again. The quills and pages from that day were gone from the classroom, but on her desk, someone had placed a single scrap of paper, folded neatly, edges still damp. She opened it. Inside, written in grey ink, "The wall remembers your name now." She turned it over. The back was smeared with what looked like ash, pressed by the faint ridges of small fingers. From the east wing came 3 slow knocks. It began quietly, as everything in Merrivale did. A missing spoon at breakfast, a folded blanket left behind on a bed that was suddenly no one's, an unlit candle in a row that was supposed to be even. On the second morning after the writing hour, Anna woke to find Lily's bed empty. The sheets had been smoothed, not stripped, the way the nuns did when someone was transferred. Her pendant hung on the bedpost, polished to a dull shine, the number scrubbed clean. No one spoke her name. At roll call, Sister Constance read through the list as if nothing had changed. When she reached L, she paused just long enough for the silence to answer. Then she continued. After prayers, Anna followed Miss Alden to the linen room, under the pretense of fetching soap. "Where is she?" she asked in a whisper. The teacher folded a sheet with perfect precision. "You know where." "The daughter's room." Miss Alden's hands froze for half a second, then resumed. "Names are not for the living to use twice. She's alive. I heard them call her." "You heard what they wanted you to." Anna stepped closer. "You said you once did what I'm about to do. Was it?" Miss Alden cut her off, eyes sharp. "Don't finish that sentence. Words have roots. Once spoken, they grow." She turned away, but Anna caught the tremor in her hands. That evening, when the last bell rang, Anna lay awake in her bed, staring at the ceiling. The rain had returned, tapping against the panes like fingertips. She could not stop seeing Lily's empty bed, the pendant gleaming faintly in the dark like a small, waiting eye. At midnight, the singing began. It started low, almost a hum, then spread, gathering tone and depth until it filled the east wing. It wasn't the hymn of "We Remain." It was faster, uneven, desperate, a plea. Anna sat up. Across the dormitory, the other girls lay still, faces turned toward the wall, pretending to sleep. She rose, grabbed her blanket, and went to the corridor. The door to the east wing was ajar. Through the gap spilled a flickering orange light. The scent of smoke and wax drifted into the hall. She stepped closer and peered in. Candles lined the walls of the corridor, now dozens of them, their flame steady despite the draft. Between them hung strips of fabric that moved as if breathing. At the far end, the door stood open for the first time. Inside, she could see nothing but the glow of more candles and movement, shadows of girls, dozens of them, shifting in rhythm. She whispered, "Lily?" The shadows turned. The singing stopped. Then, in perfect unison, every flame bent toward her, as though the room inhaled. A voice came from the doorway, not from within, but behind her. "Number 113. Anna spun. Sister Constance stood in the corridor, expression calm, hands folded. "You shouldn't be here," she said. Anna's voice cracked. "Where are they? What is this?" "This is continuation," said the sister. The school teaches virtue. Virtue must have form. You saw the walls. You saw the names. Those who forget their sin are replaced by those who remember it better. Her eyes gleamed in the candlelight. Silence is not absence, child. It is occupation. The voice you surrender fills the space of another who once held it. Anna shook her head. No. Your friend served well, the nun said. You will too. You've already begun to write. Anna backed away, heart hammering. I won't be part of this. You already are. Sister Constance raised a hand. The candles flared, and behind her the shadows began to move again, graceful, synchronized, stepping forward from the light. As they emerged, Anna saw their faces. They weren't transparent or ghostly. They were precise, each detail exact, every hair in place, every eye reflecting light but not life. They looked like the girls in the dining hall, only too still, too perfect. Lily was among them. Her eyes met Anna's, blank but aware. Around her neck hung a new pendant, brighter than the rest, engraved Dr. 21. Lily. Anna whispered. Her friend's lips parted. A faint sound escaped, barely human, half sigh, half echo. Then she spoke in unison with the others. We remain. Anna stepped backward, slamming into the wall. The brass tag in her pocket grew hot against her thigh. She ripped it out and threw it to the floor. It landed with a dull ring. The sound shattered the harmony. For a moment, the girls faltered, their movements losing precision. Sister Constance turned sharply. Stop her. Miss Alden appeared at the corner of the hall, lantern shaking in her hand. But instead of obeying, she shouted, Run! Anna ran, down the corridor, across the dormitory, her feet striking the boards like drumbeats. Behind her, the chanting rose again, faster now, a litany that seemed to pulse through the walls. We remain, we remain, we remain. She didn't stop until she reached the chapel, its heavy doors ajar. Inside, the altar candles had burned low, leaving only a thin halo of light around the crucifix. Miss Alden caught up, breathless. You shouldn't have gone there. They're alive. They're what silence made of them, the teacher said. That's not the same. She clutched Anna's shoulders. Listen to me. The sister won't let you leave. She never lets any of us leave. Anna's pulse thundered. Then how are you here? Miss Alden's mouth twitched, like a smile that couldn't quite form. Because I stayed. Long enough to remember. Long enough to teach the next one. Anna stepped back, realization dawning. Don't say it, Alden whispered. Please. Names grow roots. The chapel bell above them struck once. The sound rolled down the walls like a wave. In its echo came another fainter, from below, perfectly synchronized. 2 bells. One above, one under. The sister's voice floated from the hall. All daughters answer the bell. Miss Alden gripped Anna's hand and pressed something into it, a folded scrap of paper. When it rings again, go to the cellar under the altar. There's a door. You'll know it by the sound. Anna looked down. The paper bore a single phrase in grey ink. Remember for us. The night was unnaturally still. The kind of stillness that seems to pull sound into itself. Outside, rain clouds moved on, leaving the air sharp and cold. Inside Merrivale, every corridor glowed faintly from the candlelight the nuns had placed for inspection. The wax smoke hung low, making the walls look closer than they were. Anna waited under her blanket until the 9th bell struck, and silence fell like a curtain. Then she moved. She slipped out of bed and crossed the dormitory, clutching the scrap of paper Miss Alden had given her. The ink on it looked darker now, still damp, though days had passed. Remember for us. The chapel was empty, its tall windows black mirrors. She stepped inside, holding her breath against the cold. The floorboards creaked once, then again, lower, echoing from beneath her feet. The sound came from directly under the altar. Kneeling, she found a seam between the boards, a square outline worn smooth by years of polish. When she pressed her palm flat, the faint hum she had felt in the east wing rose from below. Steady, rhythmic, human. She lifted the hatch. A smell of dust and heat rushed out. Beneath the floor lay a narrow staircase, spiraling downward into darkness. A faint orange glow flickered below. She descended, her bare feet brushing against cold stone. At the bottom was a small vaulted room, part cellar, part shrine. Candles burned in neat rows along the walls, each one set before a wooden plaque engraved with a name. Some names were faded, others freshly carved, and in the center of the room stood the iron door. It was identical to the one upstairs, same brass hasp, same faint initials, D.R. But this one breathed. With every flicker of candlelight, the surface pulsed almost imperceptibly, as if air moved through it from the other side. When Anna pressed her ear against the metal, she heard it again. The sound of writing. Dozens of pens, scratching in perfect unison. She whispered, "Lily?" The scratching stopped. Then a girl's voice answered, faint as smoke. "We are still here." Her throat tightened. "I can help you." The voice was calm. "You already have." You remembered. Anna gripped the handle. It burned cold against her palm. "I can open it." "No," the voice said. "Doors are not meant to open. They are meant to hold." Behind her, footsteps descended. The stairs slow, deliberate. The candle flames bowed inward. Sister Constance stepped into the light, her face serene, her habit streaked with soot from the smoke above. "You found it," she said softly. The mouth of silence. Anna stood her ground. "You're keeping them trapped." "They are not trapped. They are preserved." The nun's voice held both pride and exhaustion. "You think mercy is freedom. Mercy is containment. They sinned in noise. They are purified in quiet." Anna shook her head. "They're alive in there." "No," Constance whispered, touching the iron. "Alive is a loud word. They remain." From the stairwell above came another sound, shouting, the clash of boots. Miss Alden's voice rang out, sharp and desperate. "Constance, stop this!" The sister turned. "You should not have returned here, Clara. I never left," Alden said, stepping into the light. She carried a lantern, its flame trembling wildly. "You told me I was cured. You lied. You were chosen to continue the work. I was chosen to forget." Her voice broke. "But the walls never let me." She raised the lantern higher, and for the first time, Anna saw the truth in the flickering glow. Miss Alden's shadow on the wall behind her was not whole. It was split, two outlines slightly out of sync, one kneeling, one standing. Sister Constance's eyes softened. "You stayed too long among the daughters. The silence has marked you." Alden's hand shook, but she did not lower the light. "If silence is your god, then let it hear me now." She hurled the lantern at the base of the iron door. It shattered, flame bursting across the floor, oil spreading in a thin line. The fire caught the wax from the candles, then the wood, racing around the room in bright circles. The heat bloomed instantly. Constance shouted, "Do you know what you've done?" "I'm ending it," Alden cried. Anna backed away as the door glowed red. From behind it came voices, not singing this time, but gasping, rising, overlapping. Hundreds of them. The nun pressed her palms to the metal. "They can't be released. They are not whole." Anna reached for her. "We have to get out." Constance turned, tears streaking her face. "If they rise, they'll never stop singing." A crack split through the iron, a thin line of white heat. The air filled with ash and the sound of breaking hinges. Anna grabbed Alden's arm, pulling her toward the stairs, but Alden resisted, shouting over the roar, "Go! No! Someone has to remember." Flames raced up the walls, licking the plaques, devouring names one by one. As Anna stumbled up the steps, she looked back once. Alden stood before the door, hands raised, her shadow fusing with the glow. For an instant, the two outlines on the wall merged into one. Then, the door burst open. A rush of air swept through the room like a storm, scattering papers, extinguishing flames in one instant and feeding them the next. The voices poured out, not screams, not words, just pure exhalation. Like 1,000 breaths released after holding too long. Anna reached the chapel floor and slammed the hatch shut behind her. The ground trembled. She ran into the hall, choking on smoke, the fire spreading fast through the east wing. Bells began to ring, the tower bell first, then another, lower one that seemed to rise from the earth itself. Girls poured from their dormitories, coughing, crying, their grey dresses streaked with soot. Anna shouted, "Outside! Go outside!" They fled through the main door into the cold night. Behind them, Flames climbed the walls, glowing through the windows like stained glass lit from within. From the yard, Anna saw the bell tower sway, its ropes twisting as if pulled by unseen hands. The smaller bells above the dining hall rang out of sequence, their notes weaving into the old refrain, "We remain." Then, all at once, the sound stopped. The tower collapsed. The east wing fell in on itself, sparks rising into the night like flocks of escaping birds. Anna stood in the snow, shivering, her lungs raw with smoke. Around her, the surviving girls huddled in silence, faces streaked with tears and ash. Of Sister Constance, there was no sign. Of Miss Alden, nothing but the echo of her last words, still ringing faintly in Anna's mind. Someone has to remember. 50 years later, the ashes of Merrivale had settled into history. The reform school was long gone, its grounds rebuilt, its records buried beneath decades of bureaucratic dust. But the building still stood. The state had called it a miracle of preservation, a surviving structure from the 19th century, soon to be converted into a records facility. Eleanor Brooks called it a silence that refused to die. She had worked in archives for 20 years, cataloguing old letters, wills, census rolls, voices preserved in ink. But she had never seen a file on Merrivale. It was as though the school had been swallowed whole. No closing report, no list of survivors, only a single entry in the county registry. Fire, 1,874. Total loss. No fatalities. That line had always bothered her. No fatalities. Now, standing in the newly renovated East Corridor, Eleanor could smell the lie. Even after 5 decades, the plaster held a faint trace of smoke. Her flashlight beams skimmed the surface of the walls, smooth now, freshly painted. The workers had uncovered the hidden room days earlier, the one behind the false wall, and she'd been assigned to catalogue its contents, except there weren't any. No furniture, no papers, no sign of use, just writing. Hundreds of names carved into plaster, shallow enough to disappear under a fresh coat of paint, deep enough to survive it. And on the far wall, near the floor, the faint outline of 3 letters. D. R. She crouched, tracing them with her gloved fingers. The texture was wrong. It wasn't carved, it was grown, as if the plaster itself had shaped the letters from within. The foreman, a nervous man named Harold Crane, leaned against the doorway. "We'll patch it up, Mum, if you're done." "Not yet," he shrugged. "As you like, but the lights don't hold steady down here. Keeps flickering. I'll manage." When he left, she stood in the quiet, the hum of electricity fading behind her. The stillness that filled the room wasn't empty. It had weight. She set down her case, took out her notebook, and began to copy the names. They were mostly first names: Sarah, Ruth, Lily, Anna, but some were marked with numbers. She stopped when she reached one. Anna Lowell, 113. Her breath caught. She knew that name. It appeared once, faintly, in an 1873 juvenile court record committed to Merrivale for moral correction. The line had no discharge date. As she leaned closer, she noticed a break in the plaster near the name. Something was lodged inside a corner of folded paper, browned with age. She pulled it free gently. It was sealed in blue wax, addressed to "Whoever opens the wall." Her heart raced. She recognized it instantly. This was the letter she had found that first day, the one she'd been too afraid to open. It must have fallen during the removal of the plaster. She broke the seal. Inside was a single sheet, the handwriting faint but legible, the ink grey as ash. "If you find this, we have not vanished. We remain where silence kept us." They said forgetting was grace, but forgetting is burial. Tell them we were daughters, not sinners. Tell them we tried to write our way home. Anna Lowell. No. 113. The paper trembled in her hand. She sat down on the cold floor, letting the light of her torch spill across the walls. For the first time, she noticed something she hadn't before. Faint, rhythmic patterns etched between the names, like notation. It was music. 4 measures, repeating, 3 notes, always in the same order. The pattern of rest. From somewhere deep within the wall came a faint sound, like paper shifting, like breath behind stone. Eleanor froze. "Hello?" No answer. Only the hum of her light. Then, very softly, 3 knocks. 1, pause. 2, pause. 3. She stood, trembling. "Anna." The hum deepened. The light flickered, then steadied. On the wall, just above where the letter had been, new lines appeared in the plaster, pale as veins rising to the surface, letters forming slowly, one by one. "We remain." Eleanor took a step back. "This can't be." The lights flickered again, off, on, off, each time dimmer. In the dark between them, the writing glowed faintly, like chalk in moonlight. Then, a voice. Soft, young, close. "Remember for us." The lights went out completely. She stood in the dark, her heartbeat loud in her ears. The room was utterly silent again, except for the faint sound of a bell, very far away, tolling 3 times. When the electricity returned, the wall was smooth. The writing was gone, but on the floor near her case lay something that hadn't been there before. An old iron tag, oval, worn nearly smooth. D.R. 113. Eleanor didn't sleep for 3 days. The letter never left her desk, though she couldn't bring herself to touch it again. Every time she read the words, "Tell them we were daughters," she heard the faint scrape of pen against paper echoing in her memory. On the morning of the 4th day, she took the folded sheet and a copy of the wall rubbings to Cambridge, specifically to the Department of Antiquities at Harvard College, where a linguist named Dr. Samuel Pierce owed her a favor. Pierce was a thin man in wire-rimmed glasses, more comfortable with dead languages than with living conversation. When she placed the rubbings on his desk, he adjusted his lenses and leaned close. "These markings here," he said, tracing the faint grooves between the names. "They look like chant notation, very primitive. 4-line staff, 3 recurring tones. This isn't writing, it's music." Eleanor hesitated. "Music," he nodded. "Specifically plainsong, early liturgical rhythm. But there's something odd." He tapped the page. "The pattern here, 1 note, pause, 2 notes, pause, 3. It's not a melody, it's a call." She felt the chill return. "A call for what?" He shrugged. "For response, I imagine." This kind of notation was used in monasteries, sometimes as a hidden signature of the choir. It told those who knew how to listen when to answer. She unfolded the letter and slid it across the desk. "Can you read this?" Pierce frowned, squinting at the faded grey ink. Strange choice of colour, almost like they mixed ash with the pigment. He began to read aloud, softly. "We remain where silence kept us. They said forgetting was grace, but forgetting is burial." His voice faltered. "This isn't Latin. It's English, but written in a rhythm, see? Each clause breaks on the 3rd beat. It's structured like a hymn." He turned the paper sideways. "Do you hear it?" Eleanor shook her head. Pierce hummed, tentative at first, then firmer, following the notation. The pattern emerged 3 tones, then silence, then 3 again. The sound was simple, almost childlike, but as it filled the small office, something in the air changed. The radiator hiss faltered. The clock ticked off beat, then came the faintest echo delayed, like the room itself had hummed back. Pierce stopped, startled. "Did you—" "I heard it," Eleanor whispered. He looked uneasy now. "It must be resonance. Old buildings do that." But the echo had tone, human tone. They stared at each other. Then Pierce said, "Let's try something. I'll record it." He brought out a portable phonograph, the kind used for field recordings. Crank handle, wax cylinder, horn. He set the letter on the desk beside the microphone and wound the crank. "When I hum, the cylinder will catch it. Then we'll play it back." He nodded once to Eleanor and began again. 3 tones, pause, 3 tones, pause. He stopped, flipped the switch, and the machine whirred as it played the cylinder back. At first, there was only static. Then beneath the hiss, a new sound, not the echo of his humming. Voices, dozens of them, girls. They were singing in unison, faint but clear, as though recorded in some distant chamber. The words wavered through the crackle of the wax, We remain. We remain. We remain. Eleanor's breath caught. Pierce stared at the machine, transfixed. That's impossible. It was blank wax. The phonograph kept spinning. The chorus faded into a single voice. Soft. Young. Tell them we were daughters. The needle jumped, screeching across the wax. The machine went still. Neither spoke for a long moment. Pierce reached out to steady the horn. It must be interference, some vibration pattern. A trick of... Eleanor shook her head slowly. No trick. Leaves new words on paper. She held up the letter. Where before the ink had ended after Anna's signature, a new line had appeared beneath it. Still wet. We remember you too. The color was lighter than before. As if written in smoke, Pierce stood abruptly, pacing the room. Eleanor, I suggest you destroy that document. Whatever this is, mold, reaction, the ink, it's active. You shouldn't. She folded the letter carefully and slid it back into the envelope. I'm not destroying anything. He rubbed his forehead. Then at least keep it sealed. Paper holds more than memory. When she left the office, dusk had fallen. The winter sky was the same color as the ink grey, almost translucent. She clutched the envelope to her chest as she crossed the square. Behind her, through the fog, the bells of Memorial Church began to ring. 3 times, she stopped walking. Across the street, the windows of the archive building flickered once like candlelight seen through glass. Then, faint and clear, came a hum that did not belong to any wind. 3 notes. Pause. 3 notes. Pause. The pattern of rest. By the time Eleanor returned to Merrivale, winter had hardened into its quietest form. The trees around the old property stood black against the snow, their limbs skeletal, their shadows crossing the ground like the lines of a forgotten staff. The reconstruction team had gone for the holidays. She had the entire East Wing to herself. She didn't bring Pierce. He had stopped answering her telegrams 2 days after the recording, and the letter she'd sent to his office had been returned with a single word stamped in red ink. Retired. The envelope containing Anna's letter never left her pocket. Sometimes she swore it felt warm against her heart, as if it pulsed once every few minutes, in rhythm with a memory that wasn't hers. The east corridor looked almost new now. The plaster had been patched, the floor scrubbed, the name marks buried under fresh whitewash. Only the faintest unevenness on the wall betrayed where the hidden room had once been. She stood in the silence for a long while, breathing in the cold dust. The air smelled faintly of lavender and old paper, like time pretending to be clean. Then she heard it again, not from inside the wall this time, but beneath the floorboards, a subtle vibration. 3 pulses spaced evenly apart. The pattern of rest. She knelt and pressed her hand against the floor. The vibration grew stronger. She pulled her flashlight from her satchel, scanning the baseboards. A small crack ran along the edge where 2 planks met. Using a letter opener, she pried them apart. Inside, folded carefully and wrapped in oilcloth, lay a second envelope. The wax seal was brittle but intact. The ink on the front had faded, but she could still read it. For whoever hears the silence, her breath caught. The handwriting was the same. She broke the seal. Inside were 2 pages this time. The first was dated the 7th of April, 1874, the night before the fire. The second had no date at all. She read aloud, her voice shaking slightly. If this reaches the air, then the fire has done what we could not. It will open what prayer has sealed. The room was never meant to punish. It was meant to contain our words. Each of us wrote to stay alive inside the silence. But the more we wrote, the smaller we became. They said the quiet would make us pure. But purity is what ashes call themselves when they forget they once had a body. Tell whoever finds this that we were not miracles. We were witnesses to how memory burns, and how it keeps burning long after the fire has gone out. Eleanor turned to the second page. The ink here was darker, newer, perhaps written after the fire itself. If you can read this, it means one of us remembered. That is enough. The rest can sleep. But if you ever hear 3 notes in a place that should be silent, do not answer. Silence knows its name now, and it listens for those who speak it. We remain not for salvation, but for witness, because forgetting is how the fire begins again. Anna Lowell. No. 113. Eleanor let the paper fall into her lap. Her flashlight dimmed and flickered once, then steadied. She looked at the wall, smooth and white, spotless. "Anna," she whispered, "you're free now." The air shifted. From somewhere deep inside, the plaster came the faintest reply, a whisper like breath released after a long hold. "Remember for us." She smiled through her tears. "I will." As she stood to leave, she noticed something on the far end of the corridor. A small patch of plaster had cracked and fallen away, revealing a sliver of old paint beneath. The letters were faint but legible, D.R., and below it, a single new line carved so delicately it could have been drawn by air. The daughters remember. When she stepped outside, dusk was falling. The snow carried the last orange light of the sun. As she walked toward the gate, the wind rose softly through the trees, shaping itself into 3 low tones. 1, pause. 2, pause. 3. She didn't look back, but as she crossed the field, she realized the sound wasn't fading. It was following, spreading outward, passing from the ruins into the empty air, like breath finding lungs again. When the first snowflakes began to fall, she heard something else carried on the wind voices, young and steady, singing a line that time itself had tried to erase. "We remain." Then the wind fell silent. Eleanor kept walking, the letter pressed close to her chest, until the building behind her disappeared into dusk. The Merrivale State Archive opened to the public on a grey morning in March, 1925. Snow still lingered along the edges of the old foundation, thin as parchment, unwilling to melt. Inside, the halls smelled of paint, paper, and electricity modernity layered over something older that refused to disappear. Eleanor arrived early. She had been appointed head archivist after the restoration, though no one knew how much she had discovered here or what she had left untouched. The letter from Anna Lowell remained locked in her desk drawer, its ink faded but alive, as if the words adjusted themselves when the room grew quiet. The East Wing had been deemed structurally unstable and sealed from the public. Eleanor had insisted on it. She had also requested the installation of a new fire alarm system, an array of small bells mounted throughout the building. The foreman laughed at her specifications. 3 tones, each separated by an even pause. When he asked why, she only said, "Tradition." Now, as she walked the halls before the ceremony, she listened to the faint hum of the lights, the whisper of paper shifting as the morning air circulated through the vents. The building breathed again, as it always had. In the main hall, the governor gave a short speech about preservation and progress. The reporters scribbled notes. Cameras flashed. No one mentioned what the building had once been. No one mentioned the fire. Eleanor stood at the back, near the door. She could feel the East Wing behind her like a shadow, sealed, silent, waiting. When the governor cut the ribbon, applause filled the hall. And then, without warning, the bells rang. 3 tones. Pause. 3 tones. Pause. The crowd fell quiet. The governor turned, puzzled. "Is that part of the program?" Eleanor didn't answer. She was staring at the ceiling, where the sounds seemed to come from everywhere at once. The tones were pure, clear, perfectly even, but beneath them, faintly, impossibly, she heard voices. Not echo, not machinery. Voices. They sang softly at first, as if testing the air. "We remain." Someone near the front laughed nervously. Must be the wires picking up a transmission. But the sound swelled, filling every corridor, every stairwell. The tones of the bells blended with the singing until they became one. The lights flickered, papers lifted from the tables as though stirred by invisible hands. Eleanor closed her eyes. The melody changed 3 rising notes. A pause, then 3 again. The rhythm of the wall, the rhythm of the letter, the rhythm that had survived the fire. When the song faded, the bells gave one final chime, low, resonant, lasting far longer than any metal could sustain. Then, silence. Reporters rushed forward, whispering about feedback, about faulty circuits. But Eleanor barely heard them. She was walking toward the East Wing. The double doors that had been nailed shut now stood open an inch. Inside, dust drifted in narrow beams of light, turning the air silver. On the far wall, faint but unmistakable, fresh writing had appeared through the paint, hundreds of names, some familiar, some new. At the top, above all the rest, was one line carved deeper than the others. "The daughters remember." Eleanor reached out and touched the words. The plaster was warm beneath her fingertips. Then she turned toward the open doors, her voice steady. "Welcome back." From far within the east wing came the soft answer of a single bell, perfectly timed. 1. Pause. 2. Pause. 3. She smiled. Outside, the wind carried the faintest echo of singing through the trees, so soft that it could have been mistaken for the shifting of snow. We remain, and for the first time in 50 years, Merrivale was quiet. Not the kind of silence that erased, but the kind that listened.